Alright, everybody. Today we're going in with the hard one, but an easy one at the same time. Easy in the sense that I don't know. Shut up. Eyes peeled. Do you still have eyelids? Stop. I'm never streaming Friday Night Funkin', thank you very much.
It's Mario Kart again!
Super Smash Bros. Brawl was one of my favorite games as a kid because it included the Subspace Emissary, an expansive adventure mode that featured most of the playable characters. You journey across the world of trophies, fighting enemies and bosses as you attempt to stop the evil Lord Back Tattoo from sending the world into the void. Normally, to traverse the levels, you are expected to jump, but that sounds a little bit too casual for me. What if I were to beat the entire Subspace Emissary without jumping? Now, you might think, whoa, wait a minute, Andy. Nathaniel Scuttlebug Brain Perfect Positioning Jumpless Bandy already completed this challenge. Why are you copying him? Simple. I'm not a casual. I don't know about you, but since I was a kid, I always saw up specials as jumps. So for this run, I'm going to try and complete the Subspace Emissary without using the jump button or up specials, and trust me, the run is way different and easier than if up specials were allowed. Before we begin, it's important that I define the specifics of the run. First off, I'm not allowed any jumps that can be made using the jump button. We can make sure of this by going into the game settings and changing all of the buttons that are used to jump to do something else. Additionally, I'm not allowed to use any up specials, which lay people may know as up Bs. Because I still want to be able to point my control stick up, I just reset the stage anytime I accidentally use an up special instead of remapping my entire controller. Other jumps that were not allowed included wall jumps, edge jumps, glides, floats, and jumps that get a character out of water. The most important thing I did allow was any other move a character can do to get themselves in the air, which are usually the other specials. I also allowed myself to launch from minecarts, slide launchers, and from buried states, all of which I called ejections, as they do not require the jump button to exit them. It may have been possible to avoid these, but I was already too far in the run before I considered it a conflict of interest. Another important point that I need to make is that this was played on an emulator, and I used save states, and I know that's pretty casual, but I'm a casual Smash player. My skill level in Smash is basically what you'd expect from someone who loved the game and beat all his neighborhood friends, but the second anyone with knowledge of competition level strats showed up, I'd be blown the fuck out. This channel may seem to be made with the purpose of causing me maximum suffering for your sadistic enjoyment, but it's really about overcoming challenges. So if I think it's worth cutting corners to save myself from wasting countless hours of my life, I'll do it if it doesn't cut into my standards. So if you're expecting some elite Mewtwo King level shit, lower your expectations, especially since I look even more like a casual in this video of not being able to jump. Now that's not to say there's not going to be some absolutely fucked up strategies in this run, but I'm getting ahead of myself. With all that being said, let's get right into it. We start off the run with the duel between Kirby and Mario. It really wasn't that interesting. In fact, most of the fights between other characters and bosses aren't too much harder than a normal playthrough since they don't require jumping, so I'm just going to skip over talking about most of them unless they were unique in some way. The same applies to ambushes, which are parts of the game that force you to fight a number of regular enemies before proceeding. There were some special cases, and I'll bring those up when we get to them. The first boss I encountered was Petey Piranha, which was a unique battle because the princess I chose to rescue would be my teammate for a future level in the run. I freed Zelda for no particular reason and continued on to Skyworld. This is where the run really begins, as it involves actually moving through a stage. I started as Pit, and are you fucking kidding me? I didn't expect to hit a literal wall in the first few minutes of the run, but here we are. Pit, the only character available for this section, has no moves to lift them off the ground besides a shield jump. Yes, I know I just said jump, it doesn't count, ignore it. A shield jump can be done with any character, but it doesn't allow any horizontal movement or input by the player, so it was useless for this section. However, there was an item box behind me, so I thought I may be able to get something useful from that. I made a save state next to the item cube and started reloading states to get different items. It's my understanding that the specific item spawned is dependent on which game tick the box is opened at, so attacking it at different times will produce different items. Here's the problem: you can't just get any item from a cube. The cube seemed to pull from an item pool that's specific to each individual cube, and this particular cube only produces soccer balls, smoke balls, Mr. Saturns, bunny hoods, super mushrooms, poison mushrooms, and trophies, none of which are any help to me. You can apparently manipulate the item pools by changing the difficulty, as higher difficulties will give less useful items, but none of the difficulties seem to change the specific item cube's pool. By the way, I played this run on normal difficulty, if you were wondering. I tried shooting this item box up here in hopes that there would be a different pool of items, but I only got trophies from this one. Death orbing my way over didn't work either. I even plugged in a second controller to see if I could do anything with that, but there are only two interactions I know of that can happen between player characters. The first is the warping mechanic that allows player 2 to warp to player 1, but I couldn't manipulate this to get me over the wall. The second is the ability of the players to push each other if they are close enough together. I tried using this to glitch one of the characters above the wall, but it was futile. Also, I'm pretty sure footstool jumping isn't possible in Subspace Emissary since both of the players are on the same team, but even if I could use it, I'd have to use the jump button. There was one last resort that I thought might work. Pit does have a glide, and even though I wanted to avoid it, this violation would be less severe than using an up special. Unfortunately, you must jump at least once in order to glide, and it must be a mid-air jump. This means I couldn't just fall off a ledge and initiate it. I even plugged in a Wii remote and used the motion controls to see if I could bypass the jump function, but that failed too. I just couldn't figure out a way to get past this, so I guess we'll have to start adding to this mark of shame. This run was now a minimalist challenge, looking to determine the least amount of up specials needed to complete Subspace Emissary. Moving on, I fought some baddies and came to another obstacle. There was no way I could make it across this gap on my own, but now I had enemies to blast me to the other side. This is what I called enemy launching, and I used it to overcome about 75% of the obstacles in the run. In order to do this, I needed an enemy to be on screen, so I was always cautious about attacking enemies because I didn't know when I would need them. I also needed to watch my damage. If it got too high, I would just get blasted off the screen without any hope of surviving. But if it was too low, I wouldn't get enough knockback to clear most obstacles, so it was a delicate balance to maintain. Further ahead, I met up with Mario and used the invulnerable Jix to knock me across most of the gap. I struggled a little bit with these rotating platforms, but all it took was a well-timed fall to get past them. I proceeded to the next level with Zelda and Kirby, and oh, give me a fucking break. There weren't even any item boxes in the area, nor any useful structures or enemies. There was nothing I could do with Zelda, Sheik, or Kirby, so that's another up special to the counter. The following segment was pretty easy, as I just had enemies launch me through most of it. I used these boulders to get over a couple holes, and it was on to the next stage. Donkey Kong has no moves worth talking about, but Diddy Kong's side special has a tiny bit of upward momentum and a modest amount of horizontal movement that can be pretty helpful. I wasn't tall enough to get in this cannon, but I eventually found that I could just shield jump into it. After that was the plane, where I ran into a more significant obstacle. I got to choose between Pit and Mario, but I had pretty much decided by this point I was never going to use Pit again after the events in Skyworld. Near the beginning of the stage, there was a moving wall that traveled across several gaps. It's possible to run fast enough to overcome the first gap with a ledge grab, but the second one is much wider. My first idea was to build up enough damage to get launched by this enemy, but the direction of the knockback wasn't in my favor. Maybe it could have worked eventually, but what I ended up doing was way more sick. I used Mario's cape to suspend myself in the air so that the wall could push me far enough to grab the ledge. It took a couple hundred tries to accomplish, mostly because Mario kept wanting to wall jump off the moving wall, but damn, it was satisfying to finally get across. Remember when I said it was important to keep enemies alive? In ambushes, it can also matter what enemy you kill last and where you are when you do it. In this area, I had to be able to get over the ledge when the fight ended, or I would be trapped behind it with nothing to boost me over. This trumpet-ass looking ass over here kept frolicking out of range after I'd beaten everything else. I was forced to redo the entire fight, and this time, I ended the ambush with Mario to the right of the ledge so that I'd have no problem progressing. In the lake, I got to play as Fox, whose side special was useful in clearing the gaps. Shortly into the level, I was transported into a dark room. You can get soft blocked here if you use Fox, as the objective is to hit this bomb in the corner, which is out of range of his attacks. However, if we put Diddy in here, he can grab his banana and throw it into the bomb, allowing us to skip using an up special. Unfortunately, right after that we run into another problem. There's no way to get myself up these platforms with Diddy or Fox without resorting to up specials. Although there is an item box over here, it only seems to spawn maximum tomatoes. So that's 1, 2, 3 more up specials added to the counter. The falling area was a bit tricky since I needed to get up here to hit this button. The problem was that these bucculi only have one attack and it had set knockback, meaning it doesn't scale with damage, launching me the same distance every time. Luckily, the mites that spawn over here did have the potential to launch me up to the button, allowing me to progress. I spent a stupid amount of time trying to get this hammer bro to get me out of this pit, and even more time waiting for him to hit me into this cannon. He kept jumping like a fucking idiot and wouldn't throw any of his hammers, forsaking both parts of his name. I eventually got launched and completed the level. Next was the ruined zoo. The part with the giant porky statue trying to eat my ass was pretty easy. All I had to do was survive as long as possible and make it to the end of that stage. At this section with the buttons, it's possible to just roll out of the way and let the statue open the gates. I had to make sure I had at least one stock left in order to depth warp over this water, because I can't jump out of it. The next section had various spikes to propel me through the level, and the water was a death sentence unless there was an enemy to hit me out. Weird how the things that would kill me in real life are helpful in the game, and the thing I could survive, the fucking water Pokemon, couldn't. Neither Squirtle nor Lucas had any moves to get over this wall. I tried baiting an enemy over there, but the area before is an ambush, and there are no enemies after them. And the enemies immediately before the ambush get exploded when the ambush happens, and the enemies before that are just too far away. I tried taking this bird from the beginning all the way back with me, but it just wasn't feasible. There were spikes right next to the wall, but they wouldn't launch me high enough. In general, stage hazards like spikes and lava have a set knockback, so I couldn't keep letting myself take damage and expect more air. I did, however, learn that it's possible to continuously block the spike's quote-unquote attacks. Not useful, but it was fun. I used Lucas's PSI magnet to give myself a little bit of height and a slower descent, but I didn't have enough horizontal momentum to get anywhere. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could glitch myself into this box, but no. Another up special added to the counter. Immediately after, I reached another gap that I couldn't cross without an up special. Squirtle was quickly descending the ranks to be my least favorite Pokemon, becoming useless in the face of water. Like, okay, I know you can't breathe underwater, but can't you at least do fucking something? Immediately after that was an ambush, and it required a little bit of strategy. If you kill all these creepypasta electrodes without thinking, you'll be stuck on this platform with no way to cross this gap. However, you only have to kill all the originals to end the ambush, not the clones they produce. After reenacting a warped version of the Prestige, I used one of the clones to launch me to the other side. The next stage with Marth was pretty easy, and shortly after his segment, I was introduced to the best character in the run, Meta Knight. I mean, who else did you think it was going to be? All of Meta Knight's specials can be used to gain height, with his side special being the best of the three. If Meta Knight was playable on the stage, I made sure to keep him through the entire level, as there were barely any obstacles he couldn't overcome. After using the SS tier character to make a mockery of this challenge, I moved on to the forest stage. Yoshi's down special can be used to clear some jumps, as it does have some horizontal movement, but he was completely overshadowed by Link. With his grapple, he can cross most gaps with ease, but not all of them. He had one other ace up his hammer space. If you watch Bandy's video, you'll know that throwing Link's bomb down will only launch you to the left no matter which direction you're facing. But I'm surprised he didn't think about the other ways you can utilize the bomb, or maybe at least he didn't need to. You can throw it up and position yourself under it, or you can hold onto it until it blows up, both tactics launching you in numerous directions. You can also throw it against a wall to launch yourself in the opposite direction. has a gun. Zero Suit Samus's down special flings her into the air with a really nice arc. There was a slight trick to using it, as to land on fall-through platforms I had to get myself out of the animation by doing a kick, but otherwise it's a great move and was actually really fun to execute. It can be used to bounce off walls, something it automatically does, but I thought this looked too much like a wall jump, so I never used this mechanic. She also has a tether whip that can grapple onto walls like Link's claw shot, but I apparently forgot this existed for most of the run. You get access to Pikachu shortly into the level, but only his side special was useful, and Zero Suit Samus was just so much better. There was one jump that was especially tricky, but I found the solution was just to initiate the down special while in midair. Besides that, the level was a piece of cake. Now it's back to Link. Of course, I resorted to bomb jumping. I had to build up my damage in a few spots to boost my knockback, which was really hard on some of the small platforms. After launching myself up, I came across 3 key doors that struck fear into my heart. The door I needed to get through was this top one here. I tried throwing the key into the door, but it just wouldn't bounce into it, and once the key stops bouncing, it disappears and respawns at its original location. I couldn't pull a bomb and launch myself while holding the key, so I had to throw the key up to this platform and launch myself up to grab it before it disappears. I then pinballed the key into the door and finished the stage. In the next level with Lucas and Squirtle, I encountered the worst enemy of the run, the Gamagon. These guys are incredibly powerful, shooting lasers with delayed targeting, meaning that it fires in the direction of where you were rather than where you are now. This made predicting where it would shoot pretty difficult, and in addition to that, I couldn't roll around it, and most characters in the game can't launch themselves over it, including Meta Knight. I had to knock them down a couple rungs for characters that could launch themselves, or completely destroy it with characters that can't self-launch like Lucas. This next section with the lava was probably the most infuriating part of the run. All these flaming jets have a set knockback, so I couldn't use them to get over the slabs. Even more frustrating was that these candlestick-looking fucks that I needed to launch me would get stuck in a knockback loop in the fire. At one point, I got stuck behind this little wall while this shitcock did nothing but rub his belly. I had to restart multiple times to get the enemies in the right position to launch me. I even had to push one of them away from the flames myself so that I could progress. This passiveness and stupidity was likely due to the low difficulty I was playing in, so if one of you wants to do this run on intense, at least you won't have to deal with this bullshit. Shortly ahead, I got stuck in this room after an ambush. I had to reset several times until the enemies dropped a smart bomb, which I kept until that fight was over and used to launch myself into the adjacent room, which was another ambush. However, this time, the wall was much higher, and these enemies only dropped healing items and other useless garbage at the end of the fight. I tried forever to get through this one without using enough special. Death warps weren't an option, but one thing I did try doing for a long time was timing this trackball to kill the last enemy after he had launched me into the air, the intent being that I would have enough height to clear the wall once the door opened upon his death. Unfortunately, even when delaying my fall with the PSI magnet, the time between his death and unlocking the door was just way too long. After over 100 resets, I conceded another up special to the counter, and I did try doing the battle before over and over again, hoping I'd get an item, but nothing useful showed up. With the counter reaching such a high number, I was starting to get pretty demoralized. The cave contained the most challenging parts of this run. After exploding my way through the beginning, I ran into the section with all these moving blocks. This was basically the same deal that happened with the Mario Cave section, but the walls were moving the opposite direction, so I couldn't use that technique. Though I had 4 other characters, none of them had any moves that would help me out, so it was up to my boy Link and his endless supply of boom makers. There were 3 different configurations of moving stones that vary in what part of them is cut out, and if I got caught in the cutout while it descended into the ground, I would get squashed. I couldn't grapple any of the ledges, so I would need to launch myself through the cutouts and over these 2 gaps. It was excruciating. I eventually increased my damage in order to get better launches and found that the trick was to time the bomb to blow me up after I'd fallen down this pit. After more than 150 attempts, I made it past the first gap and save stated. The next gap miraculously only took me 3 tries to clear, and I was filled with confidence and determination. However, this stage isn't over yet. While bomb launching my way through the level, I confirmed my earlier suspicions of being able to manipulate knockback direction. You see, if you make a directional input during the freeze frames of an attack, you can influence the direction in which you are knocked back. This technique is known as Smash Directional Influence, or SDI. Because Link is able to create his own knockback, he is much more versatile than the other characters that have to depend on enemies to launch them. This fact, however, made me paranoid that if I lost Link, I would be faced with a challenge that couldn't be overcome by the other characters, forcing me to restart from a much earlier save, or even the beginning of the entire level. This resulted in me building up so much damage that I started to have problems getting through the level without launching myself into oblivion, which is what happened in this room with the Koopas and the moving platforms. The only way forward was to get the bomb to explode right above the level boundary and SDI in a direction that would found out that it's only possible in Project M's debug mode. Also, it's worth mentioning that the camera's reaction time is inversely related to the amount of damage the player has, meaning that at high damage percentages, the camera moves extremely slowly, increasing the chances that the player will hit a blast line and die. Anyway, after many tries, I successfully launched myself to this spinning platform wheel. Now I just had to launch myself again to the right, but it became obvious that Link's time in this stage had come to an end. I kept going too vertical and not enough horizontal when blasting myself. I did get to this moving platform by shield jumping, but after spending way too much time trying to get the perfect launch, I ended Link's tortured existence and formulated a plan to get across with another character. As Mario, I kicked off this Koopa's wings and pushed him onto one of the moving platforms. I then spent an agonizing amount of time building up damage, manipulating the Koopa to launch me to the right, failing, and then building up more damage and trying again. I had to make sure to elicit attacks from the Koopa at certain times because if he got too close to the edge, he'd just yeet himself off the wheel. I also had to be careful not to fall on him when I came back for more damage. After a stupid amount of attempts at different percentages, I finally got myself up to 190% and successfully launched myself to the next area. Following that, there were just a couple more enemy launches, and I had completed the cave after an hour and over 500 deaths. Next, it was the ruins with Squirtle and Lucas. Man, every single level with them is a pain in the ass. Timing the mice to hit me over these moving blocks was a matter of pure luck, and the part with the spikes was also a headache. As I mentioned before, spikes have a set knockback, so you can't just rack up damage and assume you're going to get flung farther. Additionally, though I could stand on top of them, if I waited too long, I would get smushed into the ceiling. The solution was to launch myself all the way up using this cornet motherfucker, but he kept getting impaled by the spikes, so it took way longer than it should have. Once I finally got up there, I had to hit this switch to open the door. None of my ranged attacks worked, but I eventually managed to get on the spikes and survive getting smushed because the top of this spikes was spikes instead of flat ground. Wait, I hit the button with the PK fire and progressed further into the ruins. The next issue in this stage was the area with all these buttons and fast closing doors. In a normal run, it acts as a fast-paced section where you press the button and have to get through the door before it closes. Thankfully, it isn't really that tight of a window, but in my case, I can't jump up the first wall. The solution was to get this mellophone through these two doors and back to the wall where I could have him launch me. It was immensely frustrating. The first step was to push him to the door, which took fucking ages. The next obstacle was getting him trapped in between those two doors. Look how happy he is in there. Disgusting. I timed the opening of the door to match when he was frolicking in the other direction and got him to his final destination. I had to hit this button and get him to launch the door before it shut. It took a long ass time, and I eventually got through with it. I had to do the same thing with these big blocks to get through the next gate, which was sickeningly tedious as I had to hit.
Let's see what you want.
After getting slapped in the face with balls for around 15 minutes, I finally made it through. Meta Knight was available in the subsequent level, so it was pretty easy. The only thing that gave me trouble was his arming, but I think I'm just bad at the game. After way too many deaths, I defeated it and moved on to defeat the boss. In the next level, I had the option to play as Link. You already know how it went down. The swamp with Fox and Diddy presented a couple of problems. Moving from ladder to ladder with Fox was pretty tricky, and the ambush here gave me a lot of trouble. Hammer Bros in general were just annoying to defeat, especially when I couldn't reach them. This vertical side-scrolling section was also pretty difficult, and I relied on death warps on most of it because I just couldn't make some of the gaps. Towards the end of it, I had to jump off a ladder, toss a banana, pick it back up, throw it into this bomb, and get back on the ladder in order to proceed. After getting Falco, the only other exciting things in the rest of the level were the large amount of precision spring launches I had to do, and my use of the vines to get launched out of the water. Returning to the research facility, Zero Suit Samus made the beginning pretty easy. I got the suit and immediately felt a sense of good from having lost my down special acrobatics. Suit Samus still has the grapple, so it wasn't all that bad. One thing I should point out is that you can't chain the down special bombs to gain extra height, at least not like you from having lost my down special acrobatics. Vines to get launched out of the water. Returning to the research facility, Zero Suit Samus made the beginning pretty easy. I got the suit and immediately felt a sense of good from having lost my down special acrobatics. Suit Samus still has the grapple, so it wasn't all that bad. One thing I should point out is that you can't chain the down special bombs to gain extra height, at least not like you can in Melee. Speaking of which, that was the first game I wanted to do jumpless, but it had already been tasked by Stingray's 110, so be sure to check out that sick video after this one. The section with the moving boxes was hell, and I spent 10 minutes trying to find the correct timing in SCI to launch myself. The Avalanche added itself to my list of enemies. I tried for a real fucking long time to get myself over this wall with bombs, and I made it to the moving platform section. The goal was to launch myself up onto this platform over here using these robots from the Incredibles movie. It took a long time, and I got really frustrated. Son of a bitch. On one attempt, I successfully got onto the platform, but the camera didn't catch up, and I got delivered straight to the afterlife. I eventually got down and had to make one last easy launch to the door. In one of the rooms following, I was forced to fight this road turret by launching myself into the air with bombs so that I could do an aerial attack, as none of my other attacks seemed to be capable of reaching me. Then I got to this room. Neither Samus nor Pikachu had any way to clear this gap, so that's another up special to the counter. In the Outside the Ancient Ruin stage, I played as Captain Falcon while completely ignoring the other spacefaring character. There are a couple of great things about Captain Falcon. Both his fucking kick and his side special can be used to travel across gaps, and they can be used in combination with each other to overcome other obstacles. The only difficult part about this level were the Gamigas that stood in my way. Glacial Peak allowed me to use Meta Knight, so it was just recoveries the entire way out. After that, I played a level of Snake, which lasted about 2 minutes before I met back up with Meta Knight. There wasn't really anything notable about this level. Shadow Goth Princess Alert, I repeat, Shadow Goth Princess Alert. After rescuing Peach and Zelda, I now face the stage that I had been dreading since the beginning of the run. How the hell would I get anywhere when there's no enemies and neither of my characters have useful moves? Peach does have her side special, but she doesn't gain any height with it. I didn't want to use her float to cheese this, so I racked my brain for any other possibility. Wait, hold on. I remember when I used to play this with my friends, I'd sometimes get other items when I used Peach's down B. Let's see if there's anything oh shit, I could pull the bomb out? That's really fucking helpful. Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Why are we still here?
What's up?
Every night, I can feel my fingers. I swear, I pulled at least 1,000 turnouts, and there were several spots where I had to do this. The only thing I want to say about this is that if you're trying this run yourself, you can hold down the control stick and just keep pressing B instead of another button to throw the turnouts. This makes it so when you get a different item than the turnip, you won't throw it, preventing you from accidentally eating a bomb like I did several times. After collecting all of Trophy World's turnips and single-handedly solving the problem of world hunger, I had an easy Samus level before running into a roadblock in the second part of the subspace bomb factory. I needed to break these blocks and jump to the top of this section to hit a button that was a requirement for opening this door, but Captain Falcon had no moves that could reach any of the blocks. I used Diddy to break the blocks with his banana like I had in previous levels, but now I had to find a way to get up there. What I did after about an hour of different strategies was use this rod to launch me up to the second row of blocks, and then I just threw an item at the button. A little further on, there was a moving platform I couldn't reach, but I just death warped to get past it. I did a cool juggling act with the key, and after a vertical side-scrolling section, I fought Meta Ridley, one of the only boss fights that took a little bit of thinking. As his health goes down, Ridley moves further and further to the left, meaning that to reach him, I had to get on top of this fin. Fortunately, most of the characters that have joined us in the earlier parts of this stage have some move that allows them to get themselves up there. After 1 or 2 tries, I beat Meta Ridley, and now it was time to bring the fight to subspace. Almost every character I played as before was now available to use in subspace, but you know there's only one character that matters. Obviously, there wasn't any problem. But, easy come, easy go. Tattoo uses tramp stamp butterfly powers to turn all of the characters into trophies, but thankfully, some of the characters survived thanks to King DDD's brooches. And holy shit, did you guys know that DDD planned all this? According to the Smash Wiki, DDD found out about Tattoo's plans and predicted that he would turn everyone into trophies without leaving anyone to revive them. DDD created the brooches in order to circumvent this, and even gave up his own brooch for Peach. King DDD is the true hero of this story. I mean, I'm never going to play as him, but isn't that crazy? Anyway, back to the run. The character selection I had wasn't the best, but it did have next. It actually went pretty well until I got to this part. I needed to get launched way up off the screen here, but my damage was too high and I kept getting killed. So I spent a lot of time respawning to enemies in the area prior and using save states to farm the food to heal myself. In hindsight, I probably could have just restarted the level and got to this part with less damage, but whatever. When I finally got up here, I ran into another issue, as there were no enemies to launch myself past these pendulum platforms. I killed Ness hoping I could death warp, but I just got Weege in the same place. Things weren't all that bad though. In addition to his side special launch, Weege can lift himself off the ground quite high with his Ouija Cyclone. This got me through most of the level, but it was difficult in the areas with these glowing stairs. Once I hit the gold one, the others are on a timer, so I had to ascend pretty quickly in order to clear them. One particular set of stairs was incredibly difficult. I had save stated my way halfway through, but my computer lags when I create and load a save state, so I didn't make any more states in fear of running out of time. For this set of stairs, I had to press the button extremely fast. I'm estimating at least 8 or 9 inputs a second. To me, that's absolutely insane. Like, why would the max height have an input threshold that high? From what I know, not many people can mash that fast, and my max average is around 11 inputs per second, which I can achieve by flexing all the muscles in my arm in order to vibrate it. Not only did I have to do 3 of these jumps at near maximum height, I also had to make sure to angle the control stick in order to get some horizontal distance. If I didn't, I either wouldn't reach the stair, or I would just fall through the climb. I did at one point death warp to the door, but I wasn't going to let this challenge beat me, so I kept trying with Weege. Here's some live audio of the attempt. Why would you fall through, motherfucker? Oh, God. Go, Weege, go! Fuck you! Weege, you fucking green piece of shit! After 40 minutes, 300 tries, and a lot of cursing, I finally made it across. My arm was actually sore for 2 days after this. It was fucking wild, man. In the next part of Subspace, I only had Kirby to use, but thankfully I was just able to launch myself through the entire level. I rescued Meta Knight, made 200 attempts to launch myself successfully past this area, and had to time an ambush enemy to launch me into the air while it died so I could land on a platform that spawns upon its death. Now it was time for the final level, the Great Maze. This behemoth of a stage contains many of the previous areas with slight modifications. The ability to choose any character you've rescued. I picked Meta Knight, and the rest doesn't really matter. There are healing quite across the map, and you can even switch your characters if you want to, but I never did. I used Meta Knight the entire time, and there's literally nothing worth talking about. It was all free. After clearing every area in the maze, I was able to face Tattoo, but not before adding one last character to our team. I actually chose Sonic as my first character because of his homing attack, which made it easy to attack Tattoo, who moved above the ground for most of the fight. Other than that, I just chose some favorites over the course of the run that had some sort of aerial ability. It was a pretty easy boss fight, and it ended in Tattoo getting killed by a hothead despite numerous attempts to kill him with a Mr. Saturn. And that's it. Unfortunately, I did beat the Subspace Emissary without jumping. Hold the fuck up. Did you actually think we were done there? You fucking thought I would be able to do it, but your bitch ass was wrong. This was nothing compared to the old Win run. I made a new ultimate technique, motherfuckers. Sit back, because shit's about to get real. Before we get to the ultimate technique, let's clean up what we can of the up specials with some straps I picked up along the way, starting with the halberd. Zelda, Sheik, and Kirby don't have any way of overcoming this wall, but what if I got a different character in there? I restarted the playthrough, and this time saved Peach from Petey Piranha. You already know what I'm gonna do. I did have to redo one level as Peach, which was no issue, and the only other part of the game this decision affects is this boss fight, which I also redid. Another up special I cleared from the counter was in the research facility. I didn't know until after my first playthrough, but it is possible to switch back into Zero Suit Samus by inputting up taunt, down taunt, and up taunt extremely quickly. I used this to simply acrobat my way over the ledge that had stumped me before. What about the rest of the up specials? This is where the ultimate technique comes in. A mechanic introduced in Brawl was the use of stickers, which you can collect throughout the game, even the normal Brawl game type. These special adhesives give your character buffs to be used in some cases. Most of them are related to stat increases like attack power or launch resistance, but there are a special type that allow you to start each step with an item. A step refers to any time your character is loaded into the game, whether by going through a door, the spawn at the start, or after a death. You can have a beam sword, a Mr. Saturn, and oh, what's this? I started the Grind the Bulldog sticker by setting all the items off except sandbags and stickers, used the Special Brawl to increase speed, and made a custom map to increase efficiency. I mapped the controls of Player 1 and Player 2 to the same buttons on the same controller and absolutely annihilated sandbags for over 5 hours. By the end of it, I had more than 600 different stickers and many duplicates, including a good amount of Bulldog stickers. So let's start with Pit. Thankfully, you immediately start levels with the bomb, but I still had to rush over to the wall before it exploded. After 100 attempts trying to shield jump and launch myself over it, I finally cleared the wall by using a poison mushroom from the item box earlier. In the level with Diddy and Fox that forced me to use 3 up specials, I got Diddy's damage up, entered the Room of Darkness, and found out that tossing a banana doesn't throw to the bomb, so I was able to free myself from this dark prison while hanging on to my ticket out of it. I rushed over and shield jumped to this platform and began blowing myself up in all different directions. In addition to SDIing, I had to change direction in mid-air quite a bit so as to gain a lot of height without hitting the blast line. The highest I ever got was this platform, but I was still determined to get out of this without using enough special. If you blast yourself high enough, you can spawn the hammer bro on the platform above. I was able to knock him to a lower platform with a banana, and from there I got him to launch me to the ladder. That's 3 more up specials removed from the counter. Moving on to Ruin Zoo, I got through this entire section with Squirtle, backtracked to drown him in what I saw as retribution, and death warped right to the problem area with the bomb. With a simple toss in the air, I launched myself above the step and decreased the counter by another point. In the following area, I used PK Fire to open the door and threw the bomb into the wall to clear the other up special in this stage. Sticking with Lucas and Squirtle, I got these Nagagogs to low health, had them kill me so I could spawn with a bomb, made sure they did a bit of damage to me before I defeated them, and then launched myself through the now open door using the wall on the opposite side. Oh!
G'day there guys, thinks wearing a floral shirt is a personality trait here. Back at it again with another episode of r/Am I the A-Hole. Now if you love this content, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a corn on the barbie, and enjoy the bloody good content. Posted by user, Am I the A-Hole Uni Moan. Titled, Am I the A-Hole for not paying for my siblings to go to university? I'm 29 female. My siblings are 19 female, twins, and 17 male. About a year ago, I won a rather large amount of money. Since then, I paid off my mortgage, bought a rental home, paid for my parents to spend 2 months on holiday, paid off their mortgage, and bought each of my younger siblings either a car, or in the case of my brother, a motorbike. I have recently started planning my wedding to my partner of 4 years. Originally, we were going to have a very low budget wedding because neither of us were particularly wealthy and have little financial support from our parents. Hers are homophobic, and mine are just not well off enough to spend money on a wedding. But now we plan on having a slightly bigger wedding. However, during these discussions, my mother has been getting increasingly upset at the amount I'm spending. Wedding will be around 40 to 50k all up, including honeymoon, and partner is contributing 12k, so it's not like we're spending an astronomical amount, and has repeatedly suggested that we stick to our low-budget plans and give money to her for my siblings' college funds instead. These comments have been confusing me because she has told me in the past that she got 20k when I was born to put towards my college fund from her parents, and then 10k for each of my siblings. I got through college on my scholarships and my part-time job, so presumably she has 50k already for my siblings' college fund. This came to a head about a week ago, when she came with me to go to my fitting for my wedding dress, and she saw the price tag, $3,000. She had a complete meltdown in the store about me wasting money and how she needed it, and I confronted her about the college fund. She admitted that she and my dad had spent the money on trips away, alcohol, and gambling, and now there was almost nothing left. I said if she wasted 50k meant for her children's college funds, then why should I give her any more? At this point, she stormed out after throwing her glass of wine on my dress that cost $300 to clean, and has since said that she's not coming to my wedding and will stop my dad and siblings from coming. Am I the a-hole here? What? No, that's all I have to say. Your mum's crazy. She's in denial. She's big dumb. No, stupid woman. No, no, no. Not the a-hole. It's in no way your fault or responsibility that your mother squandered her own children's college funds. If you want to help your siblings through college, it should be at your discretion and not at her demands. I agree. I absolutely hate it when people waste their money on stuff like this, and then get mad when no one helps them. It's not OP's fault that her parents spent 50k on gambling, trips, and stuff, so she is not obligated to give her mother anything. Like what the person said above, if you want to help your siblings, it's up to you. Just give it to your siblings directly, rather than your parents though. Chances are, they might just waste that too. Opie, you are not the a-hole. She also paid off her parents' mortgages. Unless their income has decreased substantially, they should be able to contribute at least an equivalent amount to their kids' college fees. They could even take out a new mortgage to pay for it, although it doesn't sound like they're good enough with money to manage a lump sum over several years. Not the a-hole. She do be saying, why should I have to do that when my daughter has all that money she is just wasting on her wedding? When Opie won that money, the mother saw dollar signs and a get out of jail free card. Not the a-hole. She's toxic. It's money for your future. You've already done more than enough for your family. Your brothers can work hard and get a scholarship, or do what most do, take out loans and work. If you let them ride your coattails, you won't be helping them in the long run. Totally agree. The money she has left would be better used to set up a fund for her own future kids' college, not for her siblings. Even more after what she has already given to all of her family. She is building her own family. That should be her priority from now on, not the a-hole. Also, there is no guarantee that Opie won't need a chunk of money just to have children, if they choose. If their house is paid off, they can use that as equity to take out a loan to repay their debt to your siblings. If you're feeling generous, provide tuition money directly to your siblings. Your parents clearly can't manage finances. Good points, but I wouldn't be shocked if they've already remortgaged the house. Or possibly they can't get a second mortgage because they have extensive credit card debts. I'm amazed that they were so open about where the money is gone. That alone makes me suspect that this is just the tip of the iceberg. If she can have a conversation with her eldest daughter, why can't she speak to her younger children? Presumably they were only expecting 10k each to begin with. That's actually not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. Even if they'd done the maths and were expecting 25k, it's still not the OP's fault. This is extortion. What kind of person sacrifices their child's wedding, especially when that child has paid off their mortgage and sent them on holiday? The OP should think about hiring security for the wedding, regardless of whether she invites her family or not. I have a feeling that being able to remove people quickly and relatively quietly is going to come in handy. Posted by user Pancased, titled, Am I the a-hole for not taking a joke that my boyfriend made? My boyfriend and I met a few friends for drinks this evening. He was finishing some work, so I left the flat first, and he met up with us later on. On our walk home, he abruptly asked me if I had a key. Small context, our lock was recently broke, and until it's properly replaced, we have a temporary lock and only one key. Typically the rule is that the last person to leave the flat takes the key unless we know that one of us will be home earlier. I said I didn't because I assumed he would take it as he left the flat last. He became extremely upset and agitated. He demanded to know why I hadn't taken the key and said that he was sure I'd used it last and so must have lost it or replaced it, causing him to forget it. He repeatedly said things along the lines of, "We're screwed because of you. You realize that. I can't believe you did this." Towards the beginning, I assumed that he was joking and laughed a little, which prompted him to snarl and say, "You think this is a fudging joke? You locked us out. You lost the key." This continued for over 5 minutes. By the time we got to the flat, I was nearly crying. We stood outside of the flat for another few minutes while my boyfriend berated me. He made me peek over one of the windows to look at the space where we normally leave the key. He said, "It's not there, is it?" "Right, and whose fault is that?" I sat down on the front steps and was burying my face in my hands and thought I was going to be sick. Finally he said, "Alright then, let's go inside." When I looked up, he was taking the key out of his pocket. It was all a joke. He's now genuinely angry at me because I went directly to shower and have been very quiet for the remainder of the evening. He says I can't take a joke. I hate being the humorless tramp, but I really feel this went beyond a joke. Am I being an overly sensitive a-hole? Edit, I went to sleep and woke up to all of this, and my post is locked for some reason, so I'm not able to reply. I promised to read everything and reply to all the DMs. Sorry if it looks like I'm ignoring everyone. Editing this on the 5th of July because the post is locked. We had an on and off relationship for about 2 years now. I'm usually the one to come back because I have dependency issues and miss him too much. Stuff like this happens frequently. His inability to apologize is his worst trait. The incident in the post hit different because I truly felt I did nothing wrong and couldn't believe things fell apart so fast. I spoke with him about it the following morning. He said he wasn't to blame for my overreaction and that I owed him an apology for giving him a hard time over a joke. We didn't speak for most of the day, and now things are more or less back to normal. I'm gonna say you're not the a-hole here. This is some really weird behavior by the boyfriend. I don't think that it's particularly socially acceptable, and I'm pretty sure if you told anyone else about this, they'd be like, why is your boyfriend abusing you like this? Why is he not apologizing for this? It's obviously not a joke. You know, it's only a joke if both of us are laughing and you obviously didn't laugh. That's not okay. OP, you're not the a-hole. He played a cruel joke on you, verbally abused you until you cried, and is now gaslighting you. Check out the emotional abuse tab at the bottom of the below page. I hope you don't recognize your situation in any of that, but I fear you will. And that's thehotline.org, is this abuse and abuse defined. That's emotionally abusive as hell. I hate to be the one to say this, but please run like hell. I was previously in an emotionally abusive relationship, but my ex loved to make jokes that, like your boyfriend's, involved talking down to me or saying things that he knew would upset me. Please run. Agreed. As a sensitive woman in a relationship with a jokester, this is way too far and isn't a joke. It's emotional abuse, and he likely enjoyed toying with you and your emotions and feeling superior over you. Run. I would say I'm also a sensitive woman with a jokester, and I really give him a lot of crap about his jokes, especially when they're about something I think is completely inappropriate and unfunny. How do you gauge when you really are just being a stick in the mud? It's so hard for me to tell. Also, not the a-hole. He went way too far with this.
Stop!
Yep, not the a-hole. He's testing the waters and gaslighting her, making her question her perception about his actions and intentions. This is exactly how abuse starts. Little jokes here and there, designed to desensitize her to the emotional abuse and condition her to think that she's out of line for standing up to him. It also meant to slowly tear down her self-esteem. It will get worse. This is only the beginning. OP, I hope you run. Please, do not listen to him. It's not just a joke. He's going to back up and charm you / love bomb you when he realizes he went too far too soon, and you'll think he learned and won't do it again. It really was a joke, quote unquote. He'll just wait until you're more attached and more invested to start again. Maybe more subtle. Could even be months later before it starts again. Abusive men are patient. They'll know she'll leave if he takes off the mask, before he's properly groomed her.
Don't say
And
men.
his mask will be the perfect boyfriend. So when it goes away, she'll wonder what the hell happened, and he will brainwash her to blame herself for the change. He will tell her it's her fault, and she needs to change so the relationship can go back to normal. In fact, he will reverse everything and insist she changed, not him. But that's not true. The man she fell in love with never existed. This is the real him. He'll reverse victim and abuser throughout the relationship and use your justified anger against you. OP, he will probably complain about how mean you were being to him tonight, and how unfair it is, while writing off your feelings as not acceptable. Exactly what he's doing now, dismissing your distress and making it about him. OP, the person he showed you tonight is who he actually is. Don't write it off, please. I know it might seem like we're exaggerating, but that's how he gets you to stay, by leaving enough plausible deniability so you always doubt taking those steps away from him. Trust your guts. Seriously, please. And I know what your gut is telling you, because you posted here. I'm glad you did. It's easy to think that you won't be that girl. You won't fall for it. You'd never put up with abuse. Those girls just need to leave. But you need to understand, that's what every woman who ends up emotionally and sometimes physically and financially trapped in an abusive relationship thinks. The only women that are safe are the ones that budge and run as soon as the behavior starts. And that is exactly where you are. Choose wisely. Also, the worse he treats you while you continue to stay and forgive, the less he will respect you. The less he respects you, the worse he will treat you. Once he acts like this, like the story you have told, there is literally no going back. You have to leave. Nothing good comes next. Posted by user Jigsaw and Roses. Titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to take off my heels around my short male cousin? Hey Reddit. I, then 15 female, went to a family celebration last Christmas. It got brought up today on a family Zoom call because we're all meeting said cousin and aunt on holiday next month, and my aunt seriously told me to forget my heels. So last Christmas, we stayed in a hotel and had a meal where we got dressed up. I wore a black dress with black high heels. I picked the shoes because I like them, and they looked cool with my outfits. I'm 5'4" by the way, and my cousin James, then 23, is 5'5/5'6". With the heels, I was a bit taller than him. When I came downstairs for food, and he saw me in my heels, he was immediately sulky, especially when he took a family photo. In my family, they put the cousins in age order, and he had to stand next to me as I'm the next youngest. One of my female cousins said my heels looked nice, and commented on how tall I looked, and I replied, thanks, I really like these shoes. The extra few inches really make a difference. James then told his mother, my auntie, that I was making fun of his height. My aunt then told my dad to tell me to take the heels off, and my dad took me aside and asked me to take off the shoes so I didn't rock the boat. I refused, saying, I'm sorry my shoes are insulting his masculinity. Also, 24 is a bit old to go crying to mummy. My dad laughed, but told me to change to my Doc Martens. I refused. Cut to my aunt telling me off, and pleading with me to change, because James is insecure that he's 8 years older than you, and you're nearly his height, and taller with heels. It's enough that his sister is 5'8". I sarcastically apologized for my jeans, which she didn't appreciate, and told her that he's a bit old for his mum to do his dirty work. She told me to respect my elders, meaning her and my cousin, and I got told off by my grandma for rocking the boat. I mean, I get respect your elders, and that sarcasm isn't always the right answer, but seriously, how can you be offended by a shoe? Not to mention that it really irked me that he's 24 and can't even complain to my face, and has to get his mother, who he knows dislikes me for some reason, to tell me off. Am I the a-hole? No, this is classic mummy behavior, where she's not let him out of the pen, let him run around in life for a little while, you know, he's always just a ball and chain on the mum's side. He's like, oh god, my feelings are hurt. Mum, she's gotta fix it for me. Come on, Mum, you do my dirty work. As you know, they put in this post. There's no excuse for that behavior. He's 24, he can deal with his own battles. Jesus, what's wrong with him? And that mum for enabling it. Opie, you're not the a-hole. Women shouldn't have to lower themselves, literally, in order for all the men around them to feel better about themselves. Yep, you don't have to accommodate Lord Farquaad's fragile ego. I'm so mad at you, I just laughed so hard and spat tea everywhere. Not the a-hole, he rocked the boat first. What does he expect to do in the real world precisely? Order every woman he knows to not wear heels in his presence? I'm like half a head shorter than my entire family, and it's annoying sometimes, but it's not their problem. I'd like to know what he expects from women who are taller than him without heels. Crouch down in his presence? Walk on their knees? Yeah, like, I get younger relatives being taller being a blow. My sibling was taller than me by middle school, lol. But you don't get to tell them not to wear heels or something because of it. That doesn't constitute making fun of someone's height. If OP had burst into the room going, "Aww, who's a little short cousin, how short?" or whatever, it would be different. But she wasn't at all doing anything to him. She was just wearing her own shoes, existing. Posted by user WTF Mother-in-Law Really. Titled, Am I the a-hole for scolding my mother-in-law because she said I euthanized my first child in front of my toddler? I met my current husband in college. We were not really super serious at the time, but it was a fun, light-hearted relationship. In my graduating year, I fell pregnant with his baby. It obviously was not planned. We decided for an abortion. Life was just about to begin, and we didn't want to start off with a baby. As neither of us worked at the time, we both asked our parents for money, not saying for what. Well, somehow his mum still got wind of what the money was for, and made a terrible scene about how we can't abort her grandchild, how we can go live with them if money is an issue, that she'll find a place for the crib, etc., etc. My parents then heard about the situation, agreed I should not ruin my life, and paid for my abortion. I remained with the same guy, and later married. My mother-in-law never really forgave me for the abortion, and throughout the years made passive-aggressive comments about it. I generally just ignored them. Fast forward 12 years. I have a 4-year-old toddler. I was visiting my in-laws, and at some point was left alone with my mother-in-law and my son. We never became close, but were generally courteous. My son was doing a puzzle, and he finished it in an impressive time. I said something along the lines of, "They grow up so fast," somewhat wistfully. To which my mother-in-law said something like, "They do. You'd have a teenager by now if you hadn't euthanized your first one." I lost it. No, obviously my son does not understand that word, but it's the principle, and the way she said it. We fully plan to tell our son about contraceptives, abortion, and even that we had one, but when it's age appropriate, and a moment my husband and I will choose. I hissed, "Other room, now!" She must have seen by my demeanor that I was not kidding around, so she followed. I closed the door and scolded her, the frustration of those last years getting out. I told her I will not tolerate this bullcrap anymore, that she does not get to talk to me like that, and that if she ever mentions this in front of my son again, I won't let them go to her house. I then grabbed my son and left. My mother-in-law has since played the victim to both my husband and father-in-law, saying that I was horrible. I also really do not know what to do towards my future. My father-in-law is a great guy and a great grandpa, and my son adores him. I also don't want to ruin my husband's relationship with his parents. But at this point, I really don't want to let my son near her. Am I the a-hole for yelling at her and threatening that she won't see my child again, or am I overreacting? Edits. My husband did bring this up with her, but is at a loss on how to deal with it too. She found out originally because we didn't get our story straight about money. After reading some comments, we will likely pursue counseling. This is very loaded, but I'm so much on OP's side. That mother-in-law needs to be clapped down. She needs to continue to be clapped down. It's so insensitive to say that in front of a 4-year-old, and luckily they won't fully understand the concept, but nonetheless, they are perceptive. They pick up on these things, and random things do stick with kids, and they figure out what these things mean later in life, and they're like, put the dots together, and they're like, oh my god, who do I believe here? Who do I like? And it's just not something you want to expose your kids to. That mother-in-law should know better, and she chooses not to. She's a piece of crap, and, it'd be good to just go no contact with her for a while. Teach her the lesson that she needs to learn. OP is not the a-hole. That was an absolutely vile thing for her to say. Rich of your mother-in-law to say you were the horrible one to her, not the a-hole. So typical for mother-in-law to play the victim though. That said, it's really messed up that mother-in-law even knows. Dear husband must have told her, and that was a very stupid and bad thing to do. Now it's coming back to bite them. Being honest isn't stupid. Being a bigot about abortion in 2020 is stupid. I'm less bothered by mother-in-law's personal opinion on abortion than I am by her entitlement to the ongoings of OP's uterus and what is appropriate to say out loud, especially in her grandson's presence. Those are two lines that she has no business crossing. OP is clearly not the a-hole and would not, in fact, be the one quote-unquote ruining anyone's relationship with her mother-in-law. Mother-in-law is entirely responsible for her own actions here. It is unfortunate, but many mother-in-laws feel they are entitled to talk about their daughter or daughter-in-law's uterus. My mother-in-law was awful about it, bringing it up 3 times a day until my father-in-law told her to back off, as it was obviously making me upset. Many, not all, or even most, really so think that the only function of a daughter-in-law is to give grandkids. It's sick and wrong. I'm to the point that the second anyone from my husband's family mentions my uterus in any way, I simply say, my uterus is not a conversation topic. It makes everyone realize how awkward they are and how inappropriate they were being. RB,
Eyes
not
of
the
Heaven.
a-hole at all.
Ooh, I can do an Eyes of Heaven ability
Why
list
is
run.
mother-in-law only blaming you when it's not like you got yourself pregnant? Has he been shutting her down when she's made these comments? What's his reaction to this? In any case, you're in no way the a-hole here. Your mother-in-law is so far over the line, she couldn't see it if she turned around with binoculars. OP says, I know it sounds weird, but it's almost always like this. In the beginning, she was hostile towards us up to the point neither of us really had contact anymore, but she sort of quote-unquote came around, and then was actually helpful around the time of our wedding. But since then, most comments have been made out of my husband's earshot, so it's always a hearsay thing, basically. In the beginning, he has sort of tried to mediate, saying she's old with different morals, etc. Later, he has been annoyed, and he brought it up with her several times that it's not appropriate. Posted by user Mean Dad Am I, titled, Am I the a-hole for giving my son's college money away? Somewhat provocative title, but here's the full story. My wife and I are fortunate that we've done reasonably well in our lives. Nothing crazy, but very comfortable. We recognize that we are both very lucky and very privileged. We have 2 sons, both good kids. One is a couple of years into college, and is the one who thinks I'm an a-hole. We have paid for our son's college, in the US at a private college, so serious money. We've always been relaxed about college, would have been very supportive if he wanted to do a trade or something else, but he wanted to go to college and we supported him. Recently, like a lot of college-age students, he's become a real idealist and very progressive. Good for him. He is welcome to think whatever he likes. Where it has become an issue is that when he comes home, he started making increasingly snide remarks about how we don't pay enough in taxes. He has no idea what we pay or don't pay, and that our success is due to privilege and was at the expense of other, less fortunate people. I don't particularly object to the comments. I enjoy debate, but he doesn't seem to appreciate the irony that he is benefiting from that privilege and seems content to collect on it while doing little to try and support those he believes needs it. This came to a head recently where, following some of his comments, I said I completely agreed with him, and we needed to do more. He seemed really pleased, until I followed up with saying that to do that, we would take 75% of his tuition money and instead donate that to a charity providing scholarships to disadvantaged people. In order to pay for the rest of his tuition, he would need to get loans or pick up extra work and work nights to help fund it. He was tipped. I tried to be very explicit that this was not to try and punish him or to get him to change his views, but that it was hypocritical of him to look down on our privilege while ignoring his own, and that he needed to be prepared to also accept the cost for trying to address that inequality. He thinks I'm 100% an a-hole. My wife thinks I'm maybe 50% an a-hole. Reddit's TBD. Edit, hard to respond to everyone, but I appreciate the perspectives. Nothing has been taken yet. This was a, well, you want to help, this is what you can do to help. What I hope is to have a conversation with him about how he can help, and the relative merit of having some kind of debt/understanding of the cost of what he wants to do. I'd like to work him on what he could give up without really hurting himself in the future. Work with him on where we could save the remainder, work with him on loans, budgeting, etc. One of my concerns is that he doesn't have a high enough level of financial literacy, and I would hope to use this to help with that. I really want to get it to the point where it's something we both agree with though, and he can also see the benefit in. Edit 2. So this has proven to be a lot more controversial than expected. I appreciate the responses, way too hard to try and address any decent number of them. Looks like my wife was right, and I'm about 50% an a-hole. She'll love that. To clear up a couple of things, we would co-sign loans, likely no more than 25% for 2 years of college. I think I mentioned in a comment there's no chance we're going to leave him hanging for 75%. There is zero chance of him going to a loan shark or having to change colleges or anything even resembling that. He'll come out of it less than 50k in debt, which will not take him too long to pay off. He's wanting to go into the same field I'm in, so I'm very familiar with starting pay, what sort of progression he could expect, etc. We are also in no way quote-unquote rich. I would hate to say middle class, because about 80% of Americans think they're middle class, so maybe upper middle class. He has boundless opportunities in front of him, and this won't have any real impact on that. Some of the comments about cutting him off are way off base. Regardless of what happens here, he is and will continue to be extraordinarily privileged. I also appreciate the comments around the importance of this being a conversation with him, and something that ultimately grows both of us. I wholeheartedly agree. And yeah, I've got to agree, particularly harming you, but you're going to be put in a similar situation. I don't know. I can't talk about it all too much. I don't even understand it completely. So, because of that, I'm just going to leave it out there. Not the a-hole. But consider giving him that option. He can either donate the money or keep it for college, if you haven't already given it away. What percentage of your privilege in this regard are you willing to give up to the less fortunate is a hell of a nice way to both make him recognize the joy of having that choice, as well as the personal cost to ideals. It's all gravy giving someone else a hard time. It's another to spend his money that way. As someone who had to get his own scholarship,
Stream's approaching an hour.
Loans, it sounds like a fun psych experiment.
I haven't been talking for like
As someone
90%
who
of
traded
the
the first
stream.
half of his 20s to the military for free college, I would also love to hear his answer. And by the way, my debt for private school 4-year degree is 0. Trauma from the military, 100%. Welcome to America, where the price for an education and basic healthcare is your life. Hell yeah, brother. Going against the grain here and saying you're the a-hole. You are threatening to substantially change your son's circumstances in retaliation for him challenging you. You aren't donating 75% of your money, you are donating 75% of the money previously allocated for him because you control it. What percentage of your total wealth is that 75% of his tuition? 10%? 5%? Less? Your son is arguing that as a wealthy family, you owe something back to your community. You are saying, okay, I'll take a lot from you to give to them. You aren't saying, okay, we can all sacrifice a little to help others. If you wanted to make an actual teachable point, you should say, son, your mom and I are prepared to donate up to X% of our income this year, but we will only do it if you also donate X% of your tuition this year. You'll need to make up the difference.
Nigga, you wasn't actually gonna take it away, dummy.
Until the quote-unquote sacrifice is equitable, you are just retaliating against him for having a viewpoint that you don't share. OP says, that's a well-articulated argument. Thank you for sharing. I think my perspective, which you would likely disagree with, is I don't think of the money as ever being allocated to him. We have been contributing to help him, but he has never had any right to that money. Likewise, my preference would be for my parents to spend their last cent the day they die, rather than give me anything. They earned it, they should enjoy it. In terms of saying we should donate X percentage that he can match through his tuition, I get what you're saying, and it makes sense. My view is that it's not up to us to fund the cause he believes in. If he believes in them, he should fund them. I think if he had said how concerned he was about classmates going hungry, or people who couldn't access college due to financial constraints, that would have been a different conversation. We could have agreed on what we both could do to help. Perhaps that's how I could have framed it. As it stands, it was more of an amorphous, the rich don't pay enough, and that there should be more redistribution. It felt more like a talking point. Epic Child says, I agree with you, the a-hole. In addition to points you've brought up, being a sophomore in college would make him about 19 to 20 years old. He is still coming into his own and figuring out who he is and how he fits into the world. He still has a good amount of maturation and development ahead of him. Putting a person that young at a financial disadvantage right out of the gate isn't helping him or benefiting him. The intention there is mean-spirited and absolutely seems like more of a punishment than a teaching experience. OP replies, perhaps it's a nuance, but I don't consider it a financial disadvantage. Rather, I consider it less of a financial advantage. I had loans, my wife had loans. Both of us spent years paying those off. Loans for college are not the end of the world and not necessarily an outrageous burden, depending on the person, what they study, etc. This won't for 1 minute cripple him in any way. As I said previously,
As the stream hit 1 hour,
what I'll likely
2 minutes,
25% or something,
I mean 12,
him on where the rest
we move on to the next stream.
budgeting their costs, applications, etc.
Goodbye.
Keep in mind, the situation with loans when you went to college and now when your son is going to college are wildly different. Unless you've only gone to college in the last 10 years. And a lot of people are saying that OP is definitely